Hello there, and today I am joined by Ari Iso Rautio. Ari is the co-founder of Lumi Power Yoga in West London with his wife, Elina. Just to give you a little bit background, Ari stumbled upon yoga in the midst of a burnout, and he became one of the first certified Baptiste yoga teachers in Europe. Ari and Elina opened Lumi as a local community yoga studio in 2013, and then established Lumi Foundation in 2017, a charitable organization to bring yoga to those who would otherwise not have access to the benefits of it. So Ari not only teaches yoga, but also leads yoga teacher trainings, which is where I was fortunate enough to meet him to do my teacher training in March 2020, just at the time where all of our lives got turned upside down because of COVID. Ari, such a pleasure to have you with me. Thank you for joining me. There's so much to discuss, so let's just dive right in.
Thank you, Gret, and thank you for having me.
Great. So can you give us a little bit of background on your upbringing and early life to set the scene?
I grew up in rural Finland. I'm Finnish by nationality, on a farm in the middle of nowhere, and it was wonderful. And the older I get, the more I appreciate what I had at that time, and the real kind of organic and natural connection to nature. So that's where I grew up, and then went to school there, and then moved to Helsinki, to big city to do my education.
Isn't that so funny? I mean, about how we're sort of rushed to get away from where we grow up, and then all of a sudden you find yourself years later thinking, God, that was really nice. I sort of had the same experience growing up in a really nice area outside of New York City and couldn't wait to move away from a suburb. And then this past year just realized, wow, having space, having nature around me was actually really nice and something I missed and need more of. Hence our recent move.
Yes.
Okay, so Helsinki, and then you moved to Boston, to New York at some point, or Boston at some point, and we're working had a corporate background, right?
Yes. So from business school, I went into management consulting. This was in Finland, and quite quickly moved to London. London was the place to be, and I was very ambitious and very driven, and moved to London and started working here, and then spent a couple of years in Boston in between. Moved back to London, and I have been in London since '98.
And so I think when we were talking, you were saying you went through, one of the reasons that you sort of came to yoga was because of stressful situation and a bit of a burnout, but maybe just a little bit of a depression. Could you give us a little bit of background on that and where you were at that point, the world of work?
Yes, this was when I was living in Boston, and it was a real kind of disruption. We're all been through a disruption now in our lives from a pandemic point of view, and that was a kind of personal disruption that I went through at that time. And I had been doing well at work, climbing the ladder, and I got to this point where I was working very hard, and the working hard was getting me forward, but there was always that sense of, is this all there is? And a glimpse of this idea that, oh, so what? And at the same time, a long-term relationship broke down, and I, like you said, I was in this situation where I was burnt out, but I was also depressed. I don't know how I would define it, but life wasn't good. But I didn't feel like getting out of bed in the morning. And that's when, like for many, I think, when we go through a disruption and change and crisis, that's when we might stumble on something new, or we're perhaps more open, kind of broken open for something new. and that's when I literally stumbled on yoga.
I really identify with what you said. And I remember when I came in to listen to that initial, yoga teacher training talk, should I do it? Questioning, should I do it? And you talked about this experience. And I remember just thinking, oh my God, I remember these feelings exactly. When I was living in New York, I actually used to wake up with a panic attack every morning thinking, am I doing enough? Have I gotten to the point where I should be? And almost feeling like I was, I wasn't necessarily living my life. I was living it for other people. But I had to go through a lot of other things before I actually figured out where I needed to go. But I do think a lot of people can identify with some of the things that you're talking about. It would be really interesting to hear sort of how did you, so you obviously came to yoga because of that, but how did you deal with stress then? And what did the world of work look like? So I think there's a tie-in between stress and work, obviously.
Yeah, work was very intense, just time-wise. It soaked up everything, and at that time, before all the virtual capabilities we have now, just an awful lot of travel and being on the road and not being at home, and that added to the stress for sure. And how did I relax at that time? I think a couple of things. I'd always been into fitness, and I was running, and I would go to the gym, and that was like an escape, if I'm honest. Like that was like, it get me out of this mind state and just do something else. And I would do the same thing elsewhere in my life. It was more like an escape. So I would go to the movies, and I might go to the movies like twice a weekend or even more, like, just lock me up in a room where it's dark and I can just forget about everything. So and nothing wrong with that as such, but that's how I dealt with it. Like I needed distance and space.
Yeah, it's like you want to just switch off, make all those thoughts and all those feelings just go away, because it's easier to just shove them aside rather than dealing with them. Or at least I know that those are the things that I've tried to do. So that escapism, we all sort of manage or use it in a different way.
Yeah, and it's such an easy and obvious and very human response, I think. And then getting into yoga and starting to do more inquiry from within, actually looking at what was going on with me and the pain and the hurt and the stress. It's actually a harder work to look at all that, and when you're in the middle of that, you might not have the resources to just dive in and go, let's look at all this stuff inside, and you need to build resources first. And that's why I think yoga for me worked really well, because it started working on the physical level first. Like it gave me access and resources to then go, okay, like what else?
Oh my God, I'm just reading Bernie Clark's book on yoga, Your Body, Your Yoga. Don't know if you know that one. And it's just talking about the edge and how you have that physical edge, an emotional edge, a spiritual edge, but it's just that you have to go through those layers. But some of them you can't get to that edge because you might go too far. So you start with that physical edge. And that sort of gives you access to other edges within yourself and other opportunity to look at yourself, and that's that inquiry. Inquiry stage.
And I also think that for certainly for me, it was the case that if I had been presented with the idea of deep self-inquiry or yoga philosophy at that point, I would have just brushed it aside. I wasn't ready. The listening wasn't there. But if you presented me with okay, here's a hot yoga class and you're going to sweat and it's going to take you out for a moment and give you a sense of freedom, like, yeah, sign me up.
Well, in a way, it's sort of go back to that escapism, because you're escaping from that your mind that's just going and just bringing you into the present moment. So whereas the movies are taking you away completely, actually yoga's escaping you, but bringing you into here, into the actual things that are happening.
Oh, that's such a good point. And because it brings me into my body in the moment, and I might not even be aware of what's actually going on, but I am there and things are moving already. And I remember this about 6 months into my yoga journey, and I went into what was then called Personal Revolution Boot Camp with Baron Baptiste. And about 3 or 4 days into this, very intense yoga, and I was lying on my back at the end of a class, like intense class, complete like pool of sweat. And I just, for the first time in a long time, I thought, all is well, all is well. And it wasn't like I thought, it wasn't like I had figured life out. It wasn't that I had solved my problems, but I was in my body and I was feeling and I felt alive. And I think that moment for me was a big inspiration to continue.
Yeah, I love that. It's like, I actually got the chills as you were saying that. It's like, actually, we put so much stress and pressure on ourselves to perform and to, you know, be a certain way because society has sort of dictated certain things, but actually it's all going to be fine. And we sort of overstress. If we can just come back to our body and physical sensations or our breath, it actually is very, it's calming. It helps simplify things.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've now come full circle, and while you're still teaching and you still have the yoga studio, you're also back in the business world. What's that like for you?
It's different, and it's same and it's different. Like I work hard and I put in effort, and even the hours are sometimes similar to what I was doing, but I'm different. And the way that I'm different is probably the most important thing, is that I don't take myself so seriously. And perhaps that's something that comes with age, but it's also, I think, a practice. And then the other thing that is different is I now have tools and practices that I carry with me. I do my morning practice yoga, I meditate, and it gives me that sense of perspective on everything. In particular, when things get a little heated and busy and stressful, I know that I have tools and resources to use.
And those tools, do you feel like you've gotten them because of yoga and your practice?
Yes. Really, they all come from that. And they have emerged kind of organically over the years, my own practices, and I've learned what works for me and what doesn't, and I use what works. And what I've noticed about myself is I'm really simple. Like I don't need complex practices, but I need practices that are simple, and I do them regularly, and like that's enough.
It's like consistency. Just keep it consistent, keep it easy. Okay, so what are your practices? What works for you?
So I wake up in the morning. First thing I practice. I get physical practice. I do 45 minutes, 60 minutes, and before I do that, I start my day journaling. So I just kind of get whatever's on my mind, I get it on paper and get it moving, and I finish that with 3 things that I'm grateful for. That's one of my practices. I always do that. Get on my mat, practice, and as I do that, I sometimes have a book open and maybe just a page, and I just try and get my mental state away from the hustle and bustle of whatever is surrounding me. And those are really the main practices. And then what I do also is before I sit down and start my day work-wise, I sit down and meditate. Sometimes it's 10 minutes, sometimes it's 20 minutes. And and those are often more purposeful practices, about presencing, about setting intentions. And those are the ones that I vary kind of depending on what's going on.
But the non-negotiables are the movement, a little bit of meditation, and gratitude, it sounds like.
Yeah. They're non-negotiable. And they're non-negotiable. They're non-negotiable with myself.
Right.
Because I'm sure there's lots of negotiation I could do with other people, but I'm the worst. I'm my own worst enemy, and I need to negotiate with myself, and I've learned that if I negotiate, I tend to lose. So I don't. I just get up and do it.
Yeah, because it sets you up for a better day. I'm exactly the same. Like, I've learned what's worked, and it's evolved over time. But I'm definitely a morning person, but I can wake up feeling quite overwhelmed with things. So I know the things I need to do. And actually, whereas before I had a really hard time having a self-practice, I now have like a 20-minute self-practice that just gets me moving. And then I have a little bit of, then I have a longer meditation practice. And I also do three things I'm grateful for. And I'm trying to get my children to do it as well. We don't necessarily do three, but we talk about it. Like, what's one thing you're grateful for today?
Oh, so good. So good. And I'm very conscious that as we're talking about it, and for others and maybe people who are listening, and it can feel like, oh, but that's just like a lot. Like, I don't have time for that. And life is busy. And the way it evolved for me was, like, I wasn't always like that, and lots of different things. But one thing that really switched it for me was when our second daughter was born, and I realized I just didn't have any time in the day. I started waking up earlier. So I wake up like ridiculously early. And of course, the first month or two, I'm like, yeah, they're hard, and I miss days and I miss mornings. And then at some level, like if I woke up early and I did like 15 minutes and I just kept doing that set the routine. And I think that's the way to anything, is just make it automatic.
Yeah, I think actually very good point. It's like, you can hear people's long things of what they do, but actually you've got to start somewhere, and starting small is a really good place to start. So even if you have no meditation practice or no stillness practice or no movement practice, like starting with 5 minutes is actually better than nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I remember I started my meditations with 3 minutes. I had read somewhere that 3 is like, okay. I thought, oh, maybe I can do 3.
Yeah, but isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing with 3 minutes, you're like, oh my God, how many crazy stories can I hear in my head?
I know. Yeah.
Okay, so let's just switch over to lockdown. So obviously, I mean, we were in the midst of yoga teacher training with lockdown when lockdown hit, and obviously that was just one change. So I'm sure there's been lots of changes to your business. How did you manage lockdown? What did you learn about yourself? How integral has your practice been this past year? Did it change?
Wow, yeah, it has been another big period of disruption in my life for sure, and I think I'm not the only one. And one thing that it has really brought up is these questions about what's really important. And I was reading somewhere, someone was writing about this, it's like making us question the definition of success. What is success in life when we are no longer so attached to the outer signs of success and being out in the workplace, or being able to show off what we have. It's like we're confined to homes, and it certainly made me look more internal and more just around me with my kids and my family, and what's really important. And so that that has been hard, and it's been wonderful because it has accelerated things that probably were underneath there anyway. And now it's like, okay, well, what am I waiting for here? Like, life is short. That's one of the things I've really taken from this period. Now, on top of that, it's been incredibly hard in so many ways, and it has been absolutely wonderful in so many ways, because it has opened up this new line of, what do I really want to do and what's really important?
Yeah, I love that, because I mean, I think so many people have sort of really focused on how the challenges, but actually there have been some good things, and sometimes there's silver linings to difficult situations. I would say a lot of the time there's silver linings, and good things have come out of it. I mean, and lots of us have made big life decisions that we probably never would have made had we not gone through what we went through.
Yeah, I mean, look at you and family. You're talking to me from Portugal, and it's, maybe it would have happened, but maybe not. It's
yeah. I mean, we were always in London because, well, I've always loved it. I've loved cities. I always thought I'd be a city person, and then the past year, the sort of situation changed. I love being by the sea. I always think in my head it was like a dream that could never happen. And then all of a sudden I was like, actually, this can happen. We can do it. And if we don't do it now, then when else? So yeah, now is a good time to try. If it doesn't work, what's the worst that can happen? That was my other thing. Like, what is the worst that can happen? I mean, it's worse to say we just never took the opportunity because we were a little bit scared, rather than, oh, it didn't work, and so now we're back in London.
Mm-hmm.
So we're here in Portugal for now.
Wonderful.
Okay, so for those that are listening who do suffer from stress or anxiety, experiencing burnout, do you have any tips to recommend for them?
I think the one thing is to start with something new. And what I know about myself is I'm a creature of habit, and when I get stressed, I just tend to curl up in my little ball. And I also know that when I do new things and I take myself out of my comfort zone, I kind of experience life differently again, and it doesn't need to be much. So whether it's 3 minutes of meditation or mindfulness, that could work. But the one thing that worked for me, and I think it's just universal, is movement and getting into your body one way or another. It just has such a power to move emotion. Well, the studio, every week we have a theme, and this week our theme is move and be moved. And it's that quality of, when you move, things move. And it could be a walk, it could be a sweaty yoga class, but get yourself moving.
Movement, shift energy. But speaking of yoga, there's obviously some people that have never practiced yoga or very new to it, maybe a little bit scared to try. Do you have a message for them?
Yeah, I do. Get yourself into a yoga class. And that's really the message. And I know there's a lot of online material out there and a lot of online videos, and those are wonderful. However, you're still most likely in your own home, you're by yourself, and there's a distance. And when you find a studio or a teacher, even if it's 2 people or 20 people, the energy is just completely different. And just getting yourself into that environment, moving, breathing with other people, and having the full experience, that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, and finding those teachers that you connect with, I think, and the studio that you connect with it's so true. I miss coming into Lumi. I really do. And even though I can be here and be there online, it's like that sweaty studio I miss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, just a few more little things. In your opinion, how would you, or in your definition, do you describe well-being?
For me, well-being is a sense of feeling well within me, and it's a very subjective definition. Do I feel energetic? Do I feel calm and peaceful, but also inspired? And that would be my definition. It's nothing to do with what my body can do or how clever I am or anything like that. It's very internal.
Yeah. And what advice would you give to your younger self?
Chill, it'll be all good. That's what I would say. I was always the kid who, and I see this now in my second daughter, Evelina, like she's similar to me. It's, wanting to get things right, worried about getting things wrong, wanting to please people, and always working super hard to make sure that things are good. And that's all good, and chill. Yeah. It'll be fine.
That's so interesting that you say that about your second daughter, which just makes me wonder. I was the second, and I'm similar to that. Were you a second child?
I was the first, actually.
Okay, so my theory on that obviously doesn't hold up. And Lumi, where do you see Lumi going in the next few years?
It will. What I think is important, especially as we start to come out of the pandemic, is connection, human connection, and that is where I see Lumi being in the community as a place where people can connect and create strength and inspiration and healing in a way that only coming into a class and programs can provide. And I see that continuing, and we're also now building online presence, and that is going to be another pillar to what we do for sure. And at the heart of it, though, is physical presence and just supporting people, serving the community, and establishing a good, safe space. Great.
Well, I'm excited that I can still be part of that community, even though I'm in a different country. And that is, yeah, it is that connection. Even though I really miss being in person, I still do feel really connected every time I sign on, because your teachers all really make all the students feel welcome, whether you're in that studio or you're joining in virtually, which is really nice.
And we love it. It's, we just love what we do.
Well, it also means that you can get Lumi out there to a much wider community, which everyone needs to know about Lumi. So where can people find you? How can people find out more about you?
LumiPowerYoga.com, LUMI poweryoga.com, and find Lumi Power Yoga on Instagram and other platforms. And yeah, give us a follow or come and see us.
Yeah. And I think you're going to treat us to a very short meditation just to end the chat. So I'm going to hand it over to you.
Great. Should we do like 3 minutes or something?
Yeah,
since we talked about 3 minutes, that would be good.
We talked about 3 minutes. I think that's a good starting point.
Okay. So just establish a good seat for yourself, and in a way where you're strong and clear about your positioning on the chair or wherever you are, but also relaxed. And you could close your eyes or place your eyes downwards. And just take a few breaths. And as you take those breaths, just become aware of the inhale and become aware of the exhale. Notice your feet, the toes, the soles of the feet, ankles, and draw your awareness up your legs, your shins, into your knees, and from your knees into your seat. And just place your attention on your seat and your physical body's connection into the physical seat that you're in. Notice your lower back, the lumbar spine, the lower back, and draw your awareness up your spine, mid-back, and all the way into your neck. And there's nothing to do, nothing to figure out, nothing to get right here. And now draw your attention to your shoulders, the skin, the muscles in your shoulders. And drop your awareness to your elbows, and from your elbows into your hands and your fingers. Just notice the fingers. And as you bring your awareness, your energy into a physical body part, you might notice a shift. Like your attention, your awareness is so powerful. Now put your attention onto your forehead, your cheeks. And just notice if there is any tension, any holding. Can you let that go? So that even from this short meditation, as we come out, you come out refreshed and rejuvenated by having focused your awareness just in a different way, a whole different way of being here as you focus on your breath and as you notice your whole body. And when you're ready, open your eyes, and if you like, you could take a little stretch, maybe a couple of breaths. And go into your day. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. 3 minutes. All you need is 3 minutes, actually. It's like a really good reset for the middle of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, and I've learned that you can really do that anywhere, anytime. And like if you're traveling, if you're on public transport, if you have a moment when you're waiting for a meeting, you're waiting for something, why not? Just close your eyes. and breathe.
Yeah, don't forget the breath. The breath is so powerful. Oh, thank you, Ari. It's really been a pleasure speaking with you. You have so much knowledge, so much insight, some really, really good takeaways. And definitely everyone out there should tune into Lumi Power Yoga, and definitely get to a studio. Thank you for joining. Thank you so much for joining, Ari.
Thank you. Great.
Until next time, everyone, be here and be well. Thanks, Ari.
Thank you.